Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Kyle, and I'm out here in my shop working on cleaning it up, and I come across my stash of hammers, and I thought, you know what? This is kind of cool. I started reminiscing. I put up some stories on Instagram. I took some pictures. People really seem to kind of resonate with the hammers. I think because these hammers tell a story. And I think everybody out there, if you're watching this, you're a carpenter, you're a builder, you've been in the trades, you've got a similar thing that really tells a story about your journey and where you started and where you are at this moment. This is my journey, and I thought I'm gonna make a quick video. I'm gonna talk about it. So these are my hammers, this is my journey, and I'm gonna do a quick little story time with you guys and give you guys a little bit of insight of my life as a carpenter. So if we go back about 15 or so years, I was a junior in college. I bought my house, my first house, from my in-laws. They had it. It was an empty home for about 50 years, but it was in complete disarray. The floors had sags that you didn't want to walk on. You felt like you were going to walk through them. There was a foot of water in the basement most of the year, and it just needed so much work that I probably should have pushed it in the hole, but my dad told me, don't worry, Kyle, we can remodel this. It's going to be awesome. And I said, all right, let's go for it. So in comes my first hammer. I don't know when I got this. I really can't probably pinpoint the exact time. It just was always there. I think it honestly came from my dad's toolbox, and it just somehow ended up in my tool belt during our first days of demolition and working around my property. I instantly knew that this was not going to cut it for me. So I put this thing away and I bought what really is my first hammer. The first hammer that I ever really owned and used was this Estwing 28-ounce framing hammer that I dubbed the meat cleaver. And I did that because, man, when this thing was new, it had a nasty waffle head on it. And when I was putting a nail, if I missed, it was like slamming a meat cleaver into my finger. And I did that more times than I could probably count. But this hammer, as you can see, is probably 15 years old, still looks great, still operates the same as it did when I got it. But man, it is not the most ergonomically friendly hammer. If you use it for too long, your arms are gonna be like hanging like a noodle. And obviously, you know, at that time in my career, I was young, dumb, I didn't know much, thought that I was, you know, big and tough, so man, I'm gonna just keep swinging this thing. But it does make a great demolition hammer, which is what I was doing a lot of, and just take a ton of abuse. You look at all these little scars around the head, and you know, each one of those probably has a story in itself. But this hammer is what I carried on my tool belt for probably the first 6 or 7 years as a carpenter. You know, everywhere I went, I always felt like, yeah, I got a big hammer. But what happened was, in my career, I started getting out of residential remodeling, because a lot of you guys don't know this, but I started in residential remodeling. I did decking, I did flooring, I did bathrooms, kitchens, additions. I built new homes, and it was all fine. I loved doing it because I was working for myself. I was building things. I was seeing something from nothing. But then I did a post frame for my wife's grandpa, and I instantly fell in love. I knew at that moment that I wanted to do more post frame. It also made me realize, because in post frame, you swing your hammer a lot. You hand drive a lot of nails. And that has to do with, you know, a whole nother video about connection and engineering in the building itself. But this hammer quickly became like my arch nemesis, because I would lay in bed at night and my hand would be throbbing or falling asleep. My arm would be dead when I woke up because of the amount of wear and tear I was doing on my shoulder, my elbow, my wrist. And I'm old enough now to admit, like, this was too much of a hammer for that. So I went out, bought this titanium DeLugy, half the weight. This is only a 14-ounce wood handle. It just felt good in your hand. Nice lightweight titanium head, and you know, it just felt good. It is a real joy to pound nails with this hammer. You can see the amount of nails I have pounded with this thing because the waffle cone is like completely gone. It's wore down. You can see how many times I've probably missed the head completely and just been wrecking my wood handle. I guarantee this is not the first handle, because I've actually got another head that I just finally gave up on, and I just bought a whole new kit, at some point in time. This hammer became, a nice framing hammer for me on the post frame site because it didn't wear me out to swing it all day because it didn't weigh so much. I could do it without that wear and tear on my shoulder, or fatigue, I should say, like there is when you're swinging a 28 ounce. The problem with these hammers, because I kind of went through both of these. This is the titanium DeLugy, this is the titanium 14 ounce stiletto. Both are very similar. They hit very similar when you're using them. The claw design is a little bit different. The DeLugy's a little bit longer. The stiletto is probably a little bit more geared towards pulling out some larger nails, just the way that this design is. But I went through so many handles. I would break handles left and right, and it wasn't just because of hitting. You don't always do a perfect job, so if you have to pull nails, I would stupidly just go ahead and just crank on it with my wood handle, and it just became clear that I needed to do something different. So I went out and I bought something that I didn't think I could ever justify, and that was a $220, maybe $220+ stiletto TB2, which was kind of like the mecca of hammers. I remember I would always walk by them in the store and think, man, someday if I could justify buying that, I'm gonna. I was at that point in my career where I knew I could. I would say that was four years ago or so that I finally bought a TB2, and instantly I knew why I should have done it earlier in my career, but probably glad I didn't, because I don't think I would have appreciated it. The amount of, or I should say lack of vibration when hitting nails with this titanium, I kind of was getting the durability and strength of this steel Estwing, but I was also getting the, what I would say, ergonomics and lightweight feel of the wood-handled hammers that I previously had, all in one package, and it just felt great. It was kind of like I finally made it. I finally made it. This is the hammer that I will probably have now for the rest of my life, because as this head wears down and you lose your waffle cone, you can just go ahead and replace it. It's awesome. However, it didn't take very long for me to start having some issues. It annoyed me because the head, no matter how much I tightened this thing, the head would always become unaligned, so I couldn't put a nail set in there. It would rattle around and come loose. My grip is what really, though, pushed me over the edge. I was getting out of my lift one day, it got caught on something, and it just ripped the tip off. I was so distraught, man. I was sad because this wasn't that old of a hammer. I thought it would last me a good long time because I spent so much money on it, and I found out I couldn't just replace the grip. I would have to send this hammer off to Stiletto for them to do it, and I just didn't have time for it. Lucky for me, social media was just becoming more popular, and I started seeing these hammers on Instagram from a guy named Mark Martinez that looked very similar to my stiletto, but everybody was saying how awesome they were, how amazing they hit. And I noticed that you could replace your grip. So anytime that your grip wore down, anytime something were to happen to your grip, you just cut it off, slipped on a new one, and in a couple minutes, you're right back to it with a brand new grip. I also noticed there was no head that had to be adjusted, or I should say face on the hammer that had to be adjusted. Nail set, one piece, no worries about that ever being an issue. If ever you broke a claw, which I thankfully never did, but I know guys that did break claws on their stiletto, that is the entire hammer. This is one piece. You literally are SOL. With Mark's new hammer, you could break a claw, wear down a face, remove the grip, and everything is replaceable. You just keep the almost indestructible titanium handle, and you're good to go forever. That was the hammer I knew I had to have next. I got this 3 years ago, probably now, I would say about 3 years ago. Funny thing is, as soon as I swung this hammer, I'll never forget, I know the exact job site I was on. I know the exact task I was doing. I was building a 30 by 40 little garage, and I was framing my door jambs, driving 20 penny nails in, and I thought to myself, man, I don't like this hammer. I called Mark up, and I was like, Mark, I think I'm gonna send it back. I don't like it. And he said to me, Kyle, keep the hammer for a week, make sure that you wanna send it back, and then call me and let me know. After about a week's time, I genuinely don't think I could have went back to any of these hammers. It's just different. The way the head is steel, the handle is all titanium. The balance of it is not like any one of these hammers, and it hits with the force I would say comparable, maybe not quite a 28 ounce. I think they say like a 24 ounce Estwing, but it doesn't wear my body down. It's kind of like using a 14 ounce hammer, but with all of that durability and overall usefulness and longevity that you get out of having either a full steel hammer or the TB2. I don't know what is the next innovation. I don't know what my journey is. I don't know what the next hammer is in my journey. However, I just thought this was a cool video to make. This is so important to me that you guys understand I'm not trying to sell you on a Martinez. This is only my journey. This is only my transition from here to where I'm at now, which is more like this guy here. This is the first Martinez, and I'll just probably keep this in my shop, kind of a memento. I don't know why I ever put this green grip on, ugly as sin. It does hold a special place in my heart. I don't know if you guys know this, but Mark Martinez, the owner of Martinez Tools, the M1, he owned Stiletto. He sold it to TTI, which is the parent company to Milwaukee. He designed, developed the TB2. He designed and developed the 14 ounce that I got here. When he sold and got out, he thought he was done with tools forever, but he knew the shortcomings of the TB2. He knew the warranty issues. He knew what carpenters had problems with, and nobody was fixing it, hence why he came out with the Martinez M1. And I gotta commend him for that. I know Mark personally now. He ain't doing it for the money. I know what you're thinking. Well, then why are you selling these hammers for $200, $300. Well, that's because they're all manufactured in the US. He's got people working for him and he wants to put food on their tables. Regardless, that literally has nothing to do with this video. So don't bother dropping comments down below about how expensive these hammers are. We all drive a certain car and we could all drive the cheapest car out there, but we don't because we want to have finer things in life. And some cars get us from point A to point B a lot more comfortable. If you're young, if you're in the trades, if you're trying to figure out how do I get to the point where I'm swinging a $300 hammer? It takes time. Not everybody needs to go out and buy this, and I would tell them if they asked me, yeah, M1 is sweet. But if you're a trim carpenter, don't buy it. If you're a plumber, don't buy it, of course. If you're out there banging concrete forms, maybe you don't buy it. For me, this is my journey. I swing my hammer every day. I pound large fasteners, and this is the best option for me and my body to do it for a long time and to be as efficient and effective as possible. I thought it was a cool video. Maybe that's narcissistic to think that anybody cares about my journey as a carpenter or the hammers that have gotten me from point A to point B. I'm curious, what is your hammer journey? What does that look like? Drop that down below in the comments. I like reading those stories. And let me know if you guys are swinging any of these hammers and what you like or dislike about them. I would love to read that as well. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. And remember, I'm not selling you anything. I'm only giving you my experiences, answering questions that I receive in DMs or emails or whatever. So if you have a question, if you're curious about something, or you want me to talk about a tool or a process or anything, you can always message me. You can always drop it in the comments. I do my best to answer them, and I'm always looking for a great idea for some content that's gonna help somebody. So I would appreciate that. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch you guys on the next video. Have a good one.